Welcome back. So now we're going to talk a little bit about these request response types that we have, because when you're sending a request to a backend, it's going to take some time to get a response back. So what I'm talking about is when I'm sending this request right here, there's going to be an amount of time, and I don't know how much time. It's going to be an amount of time before I actually go to the backend, I get my code, it generates the response, it sends it back, and then I return it into the Angular code, and then I convert it into the DTO. Now, this amount of time, we don't know how long that is. So we cannot pause our code locally in order to get this done. We have to do this asynchronously, meaning we're going to let the code continue to execute if it wants to, and then we're going to wait for a response. There are multiple ways of doing them. One are promises, one are callback, and we are going to use one of the newest one called Observables. Now, an observable is a way for us to generate a request, send it over the wire, and then we're going to subscribe to this request. So we are going to subscribe right here and say, when you get a response back, call a method called next, right? And then that next method will have the data for me because it's going to pass that data into this next right here after a certain amount of time. And I know that's a lot to cover, but that's what we're going to try and use now. We're going to use these observables, we're going to subscribe to them, and then we're going to get some data back. But let's just start with figuring out how to even add an observable using our HTTP client right here. So let's get rid of that and get rid of this part, and I'll go and just generate that in the code. So inside right here with our product service now, we're going to go into that service and generate our first method right here. Now the method I want to generate is just a get all right here to get all the products we want in our system. Now it's going to return something. It's going to actually return an observable. So this is how you do return statements right here. You just do a colon and then you put in the return type right here. And what it's going to return for us is going to be a products DTO, right? That's the type that we want, array, because it's going to be multiple of these product DTOs, and that's actually all we have to do. Now we just need to figure out how we can return such an observable, and that's actually where the HTTP client is really helpful. So let's try and figure out how we can use the HTTP client for that. We'll start by calling return because we want to return something. We'll do this because it's going to be something that I can find locally in this class, and we'll say HTTP because it's the HTTP client we want to use. And when I actually look at this, you'll notice that every one of these is actually going to return an observable. Right? So we already have an observable available. Happy days! Again, that means that it's going to be an asynchronous call to the backend. We don't know how much time we'll use to get back, but at some point we'll get a reply back, right? And the way you'll use observables is calling subscribe. I'll show you that in the next lesson. We'll do the get request right here, and now I just need to know where to go. So where is my backend actually residing right now? What I'll do is I'll go into my Swagger right here to see if that can tell me where to go. If I jump into Swagger, you'll notice this is actually the route that I want to use. And I found that by just calling try it out on my Swagger, calling execute, and then I could see the URL right here on where to go to get this data from the backend. Now, of course, this will change later because I'm not going to use localhost forever. I'm going to put this in production, but for now, this is the right URL. For now, I'll also just hard code it directly inside the get request. So now it knows where to go with this request right here. It fails right now because what it tells me is, if I mouse over, you're telling me that you're getting back an observable of the type object, but what you want is actually an observable of the type product DTO array. So what I need to do is just add right here a generic, and I'll just put in, I want to get it product DTO. What it does now is actually automatically, it calls this method, it gets back, like you saw in Swagger, it gets back this data right here as JSON, and automatically it takes that JSON and converts it into an array of product DTOs. So again, it's very important that the names right here, like this, both the name and the types, they should match the name of the types you see in here, right? If that's the case, we just created our first observable from the client right here, and now we can actually use that get all later on in our code. So that's all we had to do. Now we have our first observable in the system that can do asynchronous calls for us later to kind of get this product DTO array back so we can use it in our code. So let's end it right there. See you next time where we'll try and use this inside our component. Bye-bye.